AfroTales Podcast is a part of the Connected Podcast Network. Chef. Yes, Glio. Don't you love how we get to share our stories and recipes? Yes, I enjoy it greatly. Do you know what makes it possible for everyone to hear us? Yes, Glio. Our voices, obviously. True, but it's also Anchor, a hosting platform that distributes the podcast to places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and others. Oh, yes. And isn't everything needed to make a podcast in one place? That's correct. And the best thing of all, Chef, it's free. Free, you say? Free. And all I had to do is download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. So, you just had to download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Yep. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm and do what we're doing now. Fantastic, Grio. Simply fantastic. I know, Chef. I know.
Hello and welcome. I'm Aman Mazingo, and this is the AfroTales Podcast, a show that will explore the folklore, tales, myths, and legends of the African diaspora. Okay, so today we have two stories, again, coming from two fairly different places. One story is coming from the Bahamas, while the other is coming from Alabama. I know that seems like two weird places to be picking stories from, but you'll see why I picked them in the end, and I hope you enjoy those two. One is about a bird, one is about a little man. Anyway, I'll see you guys on the other side. The Gaulin wife. There was this man who had a son and married a second time, but what he didn't know was that his new wife, she was a Gaulin, or egret. Now, every time she cooked him his peas and rice and meat, she would tell him she didn't want any because she wasn't feeling well. Then, when her husband went out to work, she turned back into a Gaulin and went out to a pond and caught crabs and ate her belly full and made haste to come back home and return into a person before her husband had come home. Each time, just as her husband left, she would go inside the bedroom and shed her clothes and begin to sing. Kitty catty, ki wong wah, kitty catty, wong wah wah, kitty catty, ki wong wah, kitty catty, wong wah wah. Ki bottom, ki pyong, ki kitty catty, ki wong wah, ki pyong. Then two wings would come out, and she would sing again. As she sang, her feathers would come out, and then she would sing again. And as she sang, a bill would come out, and then she would fly out the window and go to the pond to catch crabs. Now, the man's son suspected his stepmother wasn't a person, so he kept watch. One day, he stayed home after his father had gone, and as he was watching, he heard her song and saw her turn into a Gaulin. And when his father came back that night, the little boy said, "Papa, this wife that you have isn't really a person. She's a Gaulin." "What is that, boy?" "This couldn't be." "Yes, Papa, she is a Gaulin. And if you don't believe me, we can watch her like I did this morning when you leave for work." And he described what had happened and sang the song for his father. The next day, the Gaulin wife cooked her husband breakfast. He ate some, and so did the little boy. But she wouldn't eat anything. Her husband asked her why, and she said, I'm feeling a little sick. No, husband. I just can't eat anything this morning. Her husband went and got his gun and loaded it up, and he began to sing. Kitty catty, ki wong wah. Kitty catty, wong wah wah. Kitty catty, king wong wah. Kitty catty, wong wah. Ki bottom, ki pyong. Kitty catty, ki wong wah, ki pyong. Now, as he sang that song, she burst out crying. Husband, don't sing that. Every time you sing that song, it makes me remember my dead mother. She knew if he kept going, she would turn into a bird right in front of him. But he sang it anyhow. First time, her legs. Second time, her wing. And he sang and sang until her feet came out, her feathers, and then her bill. He took his gun. Pow! He killed her. The end. Mr. Knee-High Man wants to get big. Mr. Knee-High Man, who lived in the swamp, wanted to get big instead of being little. One day he says to himself, I'm going to call on the biggest thing in the neighborhood and find out how I can get big. So he went to see Mr. Horse. He asked Mr. Horse, Mr. Horse, I come to get you to tell me how I can grow as big as you are. Mr. Horse said, eat a whole lot of corn and run around and around until you have gone at least 20 miles. After a while, you'll be as big as me. So, Mr. Knee-High Man, he did all Mr. Horse told him to do. And the corn made his stomach hurt. And the running just made his legs hurt. And the trying, that just made his mind hurt. And he just got smaller and smaller. Then Mr. Knee-High Man sat in his house and thought how it was that Mr. Horse didn't help him at all. And he said to himself, you know what? I'm going to go see Bruh Bull. So he went to see Bruh Bull and he said, Bruh Bull, I come to ask you to tell me how to get as big as you are. And Bruh Bull told him, eat a whole lot of grass and then bellow and bellow. And the first thing you know, you'll get as big as I am. And Mr. Knee-High Man did everything Bruh Bull told him. And the grass just made his stomach hurt. And the bellowing, oh, that just made his neck hurt. And the thinking, well, that just made his mind hurt. And he just got smaller and smaller. Mr. Knee-High Man went home and sat in his house and he thought, how come Bruh Bull didn't do him any better than Mr. Horse? After a while, he heard old Mr. Hoot Owl in the middle of the swamp preaching that bad people are going to have bad luck. The Knee-High Man said to himself, I got it. I'm going to ask Mr. Hoot Owl how I can get big. And he went to Mr. Hoot Owl and he said, Mr. Hoot Owl, I come to you to ask you how I can get big. And Mr. Hoot Owl said, why do you want to be big? Mr. Knee-High Man said, I want to be big so that when I get in a fight, I can win it. And Mr. Hoot Owl said, anybody ever try to pick a fight with you? And Mr. Knee-High Man said, well, no, sir. Nobody's ever tried to pick a fight with me. So Mr. Hoo-Owl said, well, if you don't have any cause to fight, then you don't have any reason to be bigger than you are. Mr. Knee-High Man thought about that for a minute. And he finally said, but I want to be big so I can see a long way. Mr. Hoo-Owl said, when you climb a tree, do you see a long way from the top? Mr. Knee-High Man thought about that for a second. Well, yeah, I see a long way from the top of a tree. Mr. Hoo-Owl said, you know, when it comes down to it, you don't have any reason to be bigger in your body. But I know one thing for sure. You got a real good reason to be bigger in the brain. The end. Okay, so did you see why I picked the two stories? Maybe not. Okay, well, let me explain. First, we have the Gaulin wife, a woman that was just trying to have a family, but was kind of out of her place. She didn't really fit in. She didn't. Why? Well, because she was a bird and they were humans. And she was just trying to live life as a human in a position that she really shouldn't have tried. She should have just stayed the way she was. Stayed a Gaulin. Stay living the life as a bird and as a beautiful bird. If you've seen Gaulins, if you're from the Bahamas and, well, really any other kind of swamp birds, I guess you would say. I don't know what to call them swamp birds, but egrets, herrings, birds of that nature are beautiful birds. Flamingos, I think, are in this family of birds. At least I feel like they are. I could be wrong. But if she would have stayed in there, if she would have stayed in that life and lived that life, she would have been fine. But she tried to step out of her zone, and it's okay to step out of your zone from time to time, but not in this situation. Not when you have to lie to other people in order to try to be in that zone. Also, the Knee-High Man, I think it's a great story. And for some reason, I go back to my owl, being that old wise guy, telling him, you don't need to try to change who you are. Again, you don't need to go out of your position. You need to be comfortable in who you are and what you are and be happy with that instead of trying to be like other people or be like other beings. And that's really what brings these two stories together. The fact that in both situations, both main characters are trying to be other things than what they are and not be true to themselves. And if you are true to yourself, you'll find happiness in that. And then you can go out and find happiness doing other things. But at least you'll know who you are. And I want to tell everybody that. Be happy with who you are. Find the happiness within yourself and not try to be like other people because you think they live a better life or you want to fit in with them. It's not necessary. It's not needed. But I love these stories. And I love sharing these stories. And I will continue to share these stories with you guys. But yeah. And again, thank you. Thank you and thank you. See you later. Thank you for your time. You can find us on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or iTunes, or wherever you may listen to podcasts. You may also find us on Instagram and Facebook at AfroTalesPodcast, all one word, or on Twitter at AfroTalesCast. Please share, comment, like, leave a rating so others may find us just as you have. Again, I'm Aman Mazingo. This is Afro Tales Podcast, and until next time, have a great day.